Okay, good morning students. Today we are going to work on Module 4, Lesson 3 of Geometry, and today we're going to be talking about how you can identify, define, and draw perpendicular lines. So some things that you're going to need today, you're going to need a piece of paper, you are going to need your protractor that I gave you, and then you're going to need that 90-degree tool that I showed you how to make yesterday. So in order to make perpendicular lines, we are going to do a little bit of review of our terms and angles before we get into doing that. Okay, so this is something that you can just kind of participate along with the video. You can say it out loud. I obviously can't hear you because I'm at home. But it's just something that you can kind of review. It would be something that we would do on whiteboards if we were in the classroom. So if you have a piece of paper and you want to do it along with me, or you want to just say it out loud, that's okay too. Okay, so the very first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to review some vocabulary from the first couple of days. Okay, so the first thing I have here is this symbol. It has a line with two arrows on both ends, and then it has the letters A, B underneath. And I'm wondering if you remember, if you were on our Zoom meeting yesterday, we went over this, but also from the first day, if you remember what this is called. Okay. Remember we talked about how it could be confusing. Is this a line or a line segment? Well, it is a line because it has arrows that go on forever in both directions. So this is line AB. And the reason that we would label it AB is just in case we had a figure that had a bunch of different lines, or we had a shape that had a bunch of different lines on it, we could easily identify it by the letters. Okay, so that is a line. Okay, here is our next item. Should be relatively easy. It is just a point. Okay, moving on. Oh, now this one's a little bit more interesting because I didn't label it the way that I did this other one, and there are some points in between. So although the line goes on forever and ever, because it's just this middle part, this is what we would call a line segment. And the way that we would identify a line segment is we would say, we would just write the letters C, D, and then we would just put a line over the top. So I could say line segment CD, or in my fancy vocabulary coding terms, as I like to say, because it's like we're writing in code or hieroglyphics a little bit, is I would write the letter C, D, and then I would write a line over the top without the little arrow symbols because it's not a line, it's a part of the line. Okay, so this is line segment C, D. Okay, so what would you call this one then? It is the exact same thing, right? It is line segment E, F. All right, let's take a look at the next set of review terms that I have for you. Okay, let's take a look at this figure. What is this? What would we call this? Well, we would call this an angle, right? So I have three letters here, and I have one at the vertex, and it also is indicated by an arc. So we would call this angle G, H, I. We could also call it angle I, H, G. Either way, it doesn't really matter if we start up here or we start here, but H is our vertex, so it always has to go in the middle, okay? You cannot call this H, G, I, because then the arrows would go out past H and out past I, but they don't. They go past G and past I, so those have to be our beginning and our end, okay? All right. Ooh, what is this one called? We have a point at one end, and then we have a line that extends out. Do you remember what that is called from our review? That is called ray. That is a ray. And the way that we indicate ray is, of course, with the letters that represent it, and then our funny little symbol. And because our symbol starts with a point at J and the line that extends through K, we would have a line with just one part of an arrow. Okay? All right. Now we're going to go into our types of angles. So we already said that an angle would have 3 letters representing it, and it's often indicated by an arc. But look at the symbol on this angle. This has a funny little square in the corner. Does anybody remember what that funny little square means? That's right, it means it's a 90-degree angle. So the nice thing about this little square, it means whenever you see that little square in the box, you don't have to measure. They are giving you a hint. They are telling you that is already 90 degrees. So later in this unit, when we get to measuring things, you don't have to. So this is called a right angle. Okay, and we can call it angle L, M, N, or we could also call it angle N, M, L. Remember, you just follow along. So you follow from the top, L, M, N, or you can go the other way, N, M, L. But M is that part right at the vertex, so it always has to be in the middle. Okay? All right, let's look at this next type of angle. So this does not have that funny little square in the corners, and you can obviously tell that it is bigger than 90 degrees. So what is an angle that is bigger than 90 degrees? Do you remember what it's called? It is called an obtuse angle. Okay, an obtuse angle. And so we could identify it in 2 ways. There's 2 ways we could call this. We could call this angle R, S, T. Or we could reverse it and call it angle TSR. TSR. Okay, either way. And then finally, for our last review angle, we have this one. Oops, and I forgot to make a little arc right here. But it also has an arc, and if you'll notice, it is smaller than 90 degrees. So what do we call an angle that is smaller than 90 degrees? We call it a cute little baby angle. Cute, right? So that's an easy way to remember. It's so cute and little. And we would identify it with our 3 letters. So angle M, N is our vertex, O, or we could also call it O, N, M. Okay, so 2 different ways to label the same angle. Okay, but for today, we are going to get into perpendicular angles. So what is a perpendicular angle? Well, really it's quite easy. A perpendicular angle is where you get 2 lines that meet together at a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to use my straight edge here, and I'm going to use an Expo marker. So I'm hoping that this kind of works well. If it doesn't, I'll go back to paper and pencil. I thought it would be easier to erase than to use a bunch of paper. So the way that I can create a perpendicular angle for you to see is I'm going to use my straight edge and trace right along. So if you notice, I'm holding tight to my protractor, and then I'm using the straight edge to create a nice line. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fancy, I know, so fancy 90-degree tool that I have created. Super duper fancy, and I'm going to line it up along my line that I just created. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to slide it around like that. I'm going to hold it super still like this, and then I'm going to trace along the edge. And because I'm using a marker and not a pencil, whoopsies, obviously making a mistake there, but that is okay. It's part of the little learning curve. I want to trace straight down the edge, and it's going to kind of dirty up my paper, and that's all right, because as we use this paper, I mean, it's really fancy, so we can replace it at any time if it gets too yucky. But when I do that and I slide that 90-degree tool on there, look what I have created. I have created not only one 90-degree angle, but another one right on the other side. So when these 2 lines meet or intersect right here, and I could make this line keep going, right? I could take my straight edge and line it up, and I could make it go all the way through if I wanted to, and then look what would happen. I would have 2 more 90-degree angles down here. So really all a perpendicular angle is where two lines or line segments meet at a 90-degree angle, 2 or more. Okay, so again, to create a perpendicular angle, I'm going to use my straight edge. I'm going to take that off of there, and then I'm just going to put my fancy dancy 90-degree angle tool right along my line, and I'm going to hold it down tight so it doesn't wiggle. And then I'm going to hope that I can trace a straight line, which I seem to be having issues with today. So I'm going to try to trace it. There we go. Okay. And so again, it is easier to do with a pencil. So there I have created a perpendicular angle. Okay. And so you know how I said that we were kind of like writing in code or hieroglyphics? So I would want to kind of label these, right? So I always label things. So this is A, B, and we're going to call this other one here, we're going to call it C, D, okay? And it doesn't really matter where the lines are, but I probably want, you know, maybe to show that these are going on forever and ever, or that this is just a line segment, you know, if I don't want that one to go on forever and ever, I just want it to be a segment. Okay, so then I would need to write my fancy code. And so the way to do that when we're working with perpendicular angles is I would say this is line, right? It is a line. And so to write line, I first identify the letters that represent the line, and then a line is represented by 2 arrows on the top. So line AB is perpendicular, and the way we show perpendicular is this upside down T. Okay, really easy. So line AB is perpendicular to line segment. So my line segment CD, and line segment doesn't have the little arrows on it, and that's how I know the difference. Okay, and I could have made AB a line segment if I wanted to, just by taking off the points on both ends. Okay, so the way that you are going to find out whether things are perpendicular in your notebook today, or your practice book, I should say, not your notebook, is by using your 90-degree tool. Okay, so you're going to start off, and a lot of these tracing things are really hard to do with a pencil. It can sometimes be hard to see with a pencil. So what you want to make sure that you're doing is maybe getting a pen, maybe you have a yellow marker or something where you can highlight over the top. Okay, I think this one will do it, but if it doesn't, then I'll trade it out. So I have to find a pair of lines that appear to be perpendicular, and I just have to trace it. That's all it's asking me to do today. So I'm going to look here, and I'm going to use my tool and see if I can find something that matches up perfectly. All right, so if I try to go to this one, do you see how it matches this line? But then there's a gap. See that gap right here? That shows me that it's not 90 degrees. So if I come back here and I can line it up, it is exactly 90 degrees. So I'm going to trace that with my pen or my pencil to show that it's 90 degrees. And then I can indicate it with that funny little square symbol. Okay. You're going to do the same thing on the rest of the shapes and see if you can find all of the 90-degree angles, okay? Every single one of these does have a 90-degree angle, so I want to see if you can figure out which ones they are, okay? And I think on Thursday when we do our Zoom meeting, I will have you bring this so that you can kind of show which ones have 90-degree angles, okay? All right, question number 2. How do you know if 2 lines are perpendicular? Well, how would you know? This tool has something to do with it. Do you remember what it is? Well, how do you know if they are perpendicular? If you said they meet at a 90-degree angle, you are correct. Okay, yes, you know 2 lines are perpendicular if they meet at that 90-degree angle. Okay, so here I have 1 line, 2 lines. Those are 2 separate lines or line segments, right? 2 line segments or raise, make up an angle. All right, so then it says, in the square and triangular grids below, use the given segments in each grid to draw a segment that is perpendicular using a straight edge. You know what? I don't want you to use a straight edge. I want you to use your fancy little tool, because remember how easy it was? So look, if I take this fancy tool and I line one part of my line up, it doesn't even have to be directly in the middle. I can just line it up anywhere along here, and then I trace it. Look what I have created. I have created that 90-degree angle. I could use it on this side, or I could use it on that side. Both of those are 90-degree angles, even though my funny little squares aren't necessarily the best. Both sides of this would equal 90 degrees. Okay, so I want you to use your right angle tool and create your perpendicular lines on these two, and then these two lines as well, doing the same thing that I just did. And if you need to, pause and rewind the video to watch what I did over again. Okay, next you are going to use your right angle template to determine which of the following figures have a right angle. Mark each right angle with a small square. Okay, so you can see they've kind of gotten started for you on the problem set right here. And some of these aren't going to have perpendicular angles, so you're going to need to use your tool and check each symbol very carefully. Okay, so I see that this is a rectangle, and you know what? Rectangles and squares are special because they have 4 right angles no matter what. So I know I should have listed 4 sets down here. So see if you can find all of the sets of perpendicular angles. Okay, and some of these aren't going to. So if I look, I want to line up, look, if I line that up, look how perfectly that lines up. So I know that A or CA is perpendicular to AB. So I could write that. Okay, I'm going to put a little square in the corner here, and I'm going to say line segment CA is perpendicular to line segment AB. Okay, kind of like code, right? So this symbol means line segment. I write my line segment, which is CA, and then is perpendicular, meaning that it forms a 90-degree angle with line segment AB. Okay, see if you can find the other 2 that they're talking about. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here when I'm done, and I'm going to see, oh, look, see how there's a gap right there? So that's not 90 degrees. So I'm going to try the next one. Oh, there's another gap. That's not 90 degrees. That has a gap, so that's not 90 degrees. That has a gap, so that's not 90 degrees. This one doesn't have any, so I can just put an X on it. Okay, and an oval clearly has no 90-degree angles. Okay, so I look here, and I think that looks 90 degrees. So I'm going to use my tool, and I am going to, look how wonderful that matches up. So I know that that angle right there is a right angle. So now I'm going to write my code, right? I have line segment GE. Line segment GE is perpendicular. That little upside down T means perpendicular. And then my other line segment is EF to EF. Okay, and there's only one. If I look, that is an acute angle, so I know that can't be, and this is a cute little baby angle, so I know it can't be either. But I see some other shapes down here, and there are 2 of those shapes that have 90-degree angles and 2 that do not. So see if you can figure out what those 90-degree angles are, and see if you can write the corresponding letters and symbols for those 90-degree angles for me. Okay, I look forward to seeing your practice books and seeing what you're doing. You can always take pictures of them and post them for me so I can see if you're on the right track. And then, of course, do your lesson on Go Formative. Click the Go Formative link and go and take the exit ticket so I can see if you're understanding what is being taught. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.